talk to you guys about the new Dragon cards. I'm sorry, I have a bit of a cold today, so I apologize if I keep coughing or something. But anyway, yesterday I think or 2 days ago, new Dragon cards were announced that will be released in Lord of Tychon Galaxy, which I believe is right after the upcoming Cosmo Blazar patch, and I'm really excited for that one too. Actually, I'm excited for both of them. Both packs have so many good cards I want. Um, but that's off topic. The four cards are Tempest, the Storm Suppressor Dragon, uh, Blaster, the Flame Suppressor Dragon, Tidal, the Waterfall Suppressor Dragon, and Redox, the Rigid Suppressor Dragon. Rigid Suppressor Dragon. So basically, they each somehow remind me of cards in like that already made, but I'll read each of their effects. We'll start with Tempest. Tempest is a wind type of level 7. Actually, they're all level 7. So you can make big out of any of them. This one in particular is 2400 attack and 2200 defense. Its effect states when you can banish 2 dragon type or wind type monsters from your hand or your graveyard, except this card. The special summon this card from your hand or graveyard. During your opponent's end phase, if this card is special summoned, return it to the hand. You can send this card and one other wind type monster from your hand to your graveyard. Add one dragon type monster from your deck to your hand. When this card is banished, add one wind type dragon monster from your deck to your hand. You can only activate the effect of Tempest, the Storm Suppressor Dragon, once per turn. Now, this card has a pretty decent effect. I mean, the ability to immediately add any dragon from your deck to your hand allows you instantly add Rise Darkness Smell Dragon, which is very useful in this deck. You can add the Beb, you can add Delta Flyer, depending on the situation. You know, you can add any dragon. Even Lad if you run Lad Disaster. The really only real issues I have with the card is the fact that its stats aren't that great. It's somewhat like a Spirit Monster, except it returns to the hand during your opponent's end phase instead of your end phase. I do like the fact that it can be special summoned by Darkness Smell. It's not a monster that can only be special summoned by its own effect. But I mean, this card is probably one of the best out of this four. So if this card when this card is released in TCG, if the meta, depending on how the meta is and stuff, I'd probably run this at 1, maybe 2. Really the only issue is that it has way too low of an attack. But besides, and second effect, you have to add 1 Dragon Wind type monster from your hand, which isn't that bad because I mean your targets are pretty much just Delta Flyer and Kawaki, but I mean, you know, but it still has a really good effect. Next is Blaster. I'm just gonna call him Blaster. I don't feel like reading the whole thing. You can banish 2 Dragon type monsters or 2 Fire type monsters from your hand to your graveyard, except this card. You can also summon this card from your hand or graveyard. During your opponent's end phase, if this card is special summoned, return it to your hand. You can send this card and one other Fire type monster from your hand to your graveyard to target one card in the field, destroy that target. When this card is banished, add 1 Fire Dragon type monster from your deck to your hand. You can only activate the effect of Blaster Flame Dragon once per turn. Oh yeah, I forgot to say for all of these, it's when they're special summoned, not just by its effects, but if they're special summoned by any way, they are returned to a hand at your opponent's end phase. So that's just something I should throw out there, in case anyone has a dispute. But this card has a okay effect. I mean, I like the fact that the 2800 beat stick. It's a strong beater, so it could be used as that. Has pretty sweet artwork. Now again, I have to point out the good part of this card and the flaws. The good part of this card, other than the fact it's a 2800 beater, is the fact that it can immediately pop 1 card. As in, you can start this card in a fire type. You get to pop any card in the field. The flaw to this card is the exact same. The fact that you have to discard 1 fire type monster from your hand to pop a card. think about all the fire type monsters that are running as active dragons. Off the top of my head, the only one I can think of that's in the main deck is Mass Dragon. And generally speaking, you would want to set the Mass Dragon. I mean, you could pop it, but I mean, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. That's one flaw. The second flaw is to add one fire type dragon from your deck to your hand. I mean, it's good that you can add a dragon, but the flaw about it is that other than 200 beasted part, this card is not really that great in my opinion. I mean, your only target is Mass Dragon, and they'll know you and then if you set a card, they'll probably know you set a Mass Dragon, or maybe it's Floater, but I mean, that's another flaw. And the fact that generally speaking, you only run up to 3 Mass Dragons, and the fact that you have to add one of them or star one of them just to pop a card or add one from the deck to your hand. Generally speaking, that effect will not be used that often, and if you do use it, it's just not going to be a little bit of a waste. So I wouldn't really run this card at all. It's just a beat stick in my opinion. But nope, this is all my takes on the dragon cards. So yeah. Next, title the Waterfall Refresher Dragon. Alright. Banish 2 dragon type water monsters from your hand or graveyard. Except this card. Special summon this card from your hand or graveyard. During your opponent's end phase, if this card special summon returns to hand, you can send this card one other water type monster from your hand to your graveyard. Target one monster from your send one monster from your deck to your graveyard. When this card is banished, add one water dragon type monster from your hand, and you can only activate the effect of Tower Waterfall Dragon once per turn. Okay, so this card it's pretty good attack. I mean, it's above average, especially for a level 7 monster. It has an okay effect in the fact that you send one monster from your deck to your graveyard, but I mean, there is flaws. I mean, there is better cards to run other than this because you're saying you're restricted to having this card basically send one water monster and this card. I'd rather just use dragons. Excuse me. Excuse me for that. I'd rather run Dragon's Ravine or potentially even Foolish Barrier would be a better card than this. I mean, in effect wise, I'd rather have Dragon's Ravine because I can discard Wyvern and get Darkness Smell to the grave rather than discard this and Darkness Smell or something. So, yeah, this card's okay, but it's not that great. One thing I can say about this card is that it can be usable in Frozen Ray just because of the fact it's a water type monster. I mean, if you just want that option, you can run it, but I mean, besides that, I don't really see much of a use for it. Next is the Earth Dragon. Redux. You can banish 2 dragon type monsters with 2 earth monsters from your hand or graveyard to accept this card. Spell summon this card from your hand or graveyard. During your opponent's end phase, if this card spell summon returns to your hand, you can send this card and one other earth monster from your hand to your graveyard to target one monster in your graveyard. Spell summon that target. When this card is banished, add one earth monster from your deck to your hand. You can only use the effect of Redux the Richest Dragon once per turn. This is probably my second favorite or my favorite. I can't decide because Tempest and Redux both have really good effects. This is pretty much a monster board. Okay? And the cool thing about this card is that I don't think it says you have to spell summon a dragon. It just says spell summon. You can set you. You target. It's basically just a monster board. And any deck that runs an Earth monster can easily run this. Like Gadgets can run this. You can run this in Gadgets. You can run this in Yugioh Card Furies. There's a few decks that if you run Earth monster type decks, you can easily run this card because it doesn't. You don't own it. I mean, there's 2 ways to summon it. Either by banishing 2 dragon types or 2 earth types, and that's pretty easy to do. He's a 3K defense monster, and he's a monster reborn pretty much on crack. Well, not on crack, but he's just a monster reborn that you can potentially use over and over again if you have a good enough hand. Alright, that's bullcrap. the only thing I'm sometimes prefer calling Haunted over this, but I mean, either way, it's a really good card. You can revive any card in your graveyard, any monster in your graveyard. And then, of course, like all the others, you can add, when it's banished, you can add one Dragon type monster from your deck to your hand, and the effective redots can only be used once per turn. In Disaster Dragons, the only Earth cards I can think of off the top of my head would be the Exploder Dragons. Yeah, this Exploder. That'll be the only ones I can actually think off the top of my head. But I mean, again, like all of these are but again, all of these cards can be summoned by a Tomb or Darkness Maul effect, so they can be used in either deck. This one, honestly, to me, has the least amount of flaws, besides its low attack power, so... But, I mean, it's a 3k defense, so that makes up for it anyway. Really, I don't really see any flaws with this card. Well, not really that many flaws. The cost is a little grave. I mean, paying for all of these is banishing 2 dragon types, but, I mean... Some of these have really good effects, and some of these not so good. But, I mean... I guess it's up to player preference, but in my personal opinion, these cards aren't that great. Cause I mean, a perfect example would be let me see, yeah, the water one. Like I said earlier, I run Foolish Burial, or Dragon Ravine, or even Lavable Chain. Those 3 cards seem a lot better than running this one card. Then with Blaster. Even though I can't really think of a card in dragons that can pop automatically besides Snapdragon, I still rather run other. We still have playing enough cards that pop, and besides the 200 attack points, it's not even that great of a card. Storm is pretty good. You have to add 1 dragon type monster from your deck to your hand, so that's pretty sweet. I mean, I don't really know if really any card allows you to add any dragon type monster of your choice. The closest I can think of is a Lavable Chain, with I let you put it at the top of your deck, but that's about it. So this card actually has some use I can see. And then Redots. Personally, I wouldn't run this in particular dragon, but I do see a lot of use for this card, as it is pretty much a call to Haunted for dragons. So yeah, this is pretty much my take on the dragon cards. The only really 2 usable ones, in my opinion, are Tempest and Redox, and out of all of them, I would just say Tempest is the best. Just because it allows you to add any dragon from your deck to your hand, which speeds up the deck a tiny bit and adds consistency. And because this card's wording, you can it can spell something from the graveyard as well, somewhat like Pulsar. Except instead of sending cards from your hand to the graveyard, you banish 2 dragons from your hand to the graveyard. So yeah, that's my take on the dragon cards. I'll have their effects below. I'll probably have links to each of these cards below as well. So yeah, remember to rate, comment, subscribe. Tell me what you guys think. Tell me if you guys think these cards can be used in Disaster Dragons, and if you disagree with me on anything I said about these cards, please PM me or put it in the comment section below, and I will see you next time.